Wow, NA streams. Should record. But yeah, if you are watching on YouTube, welcome to YouTube. If you're watching on a live stream, welcome. Of course, I live stream and I post the playback VODs on YouTube the next day. So if you want to watch it live, you can watch it live here on twitch.tv/Dragon001. It's just my gamer tag. Same thing with YouTube. And if you want to keep up to date with all things on both sides, I post pretty much updates on my Twitter. So that's just the same thing, but it is with a 3 instead of an E because some jerk stole Dragon001, and I just don't know why. It's kind of dumb. But yeah. So yeah, we're going to be talking about how to work with a Hammond and how to, of course, play Hammond in a team comp. So we're going to be talking about comp strategies and just overall playing him. Just kind of fun. But yeah, the main things is that you want to understand what your Hammond can do on your team, because each dive tank is very different, and a lot of the reasons why dive teams have some issues is because the dive time. So what's interesting is that there's like multiple ways for a dive to actually occur. Not like interaction based, but more of how a dive runs. And there's 3 aspects. There's your cooldown time on your movement abilities. There's your movement distance, and it's your max range that you can move. And then of course there's your movement speed. And so and those are a lot to take into account. There's also verticality. Verticality is actually a big part now that I think about it, because Tracer doesn't have that vertical movement, so she can't be a part of that. So there's a secret 4th one, to be honestly. NA streamer, yeah, true. But yeah, if any of you guys have any questions on YouTube, put them in the comments. If you have any questions on live stream, of course, ask them right away, and I'll answer them live, of course. But yeah, so yeah, we're going to be talking about the dive tanks overall. And so like Winston's the main dive tank that everyone thinks about. So Winston has at the moment the 2nd farthest dive, so he's kind of middle ground on dive. So Hammond does go a little bit farther, but Diva goes, I think Diva's similar to the same, but she technically has less. So yeah, like Diva, boom. So Diva's the slowest out of all of them. She has the longest cooldown, and the reason why is because her cooldown starts at the end of it, and it just starts counting there. Whereas Winston, he jumps and it immediately starts as he jumps. Well, that's 500 ping. Wow. Okay, frames are dropping. That is just bad news, Bear. But yeah, the show must go on, so whatever. So yeah, the dive speed of Winston is faster, and it has a lesser cooldown because it starts the moment he leaves off the ground. So technically he does have faster. So some people say, like, movement wise, you want your slowest moving player to be making the dive calls. Technically, it should be Diva in that instance, because she does have DAP ping though. Really, yeah. But yeah, she technically is the slowest overall. Yeah, rough day for internet overall. I agree, Teasus. But with Hammond, so Hammond does a couple of things. One, the cooldown on his grapple hook is actually a lot less. So I believe it's just 5 seconds, whereas the other ones are 6 seconds overall, which is not too bad. And let me double check that real quick. Yeah, 6 seconds on Winston jump. And oh, technically that's 5 seconds. So I think 1 second's not too. I think dive timing, I prefer Diva. Forgot Diva does that. But it's okay. With Hammond, though, he does have the farthest dive speed. Well, the farthest dive distance. because he can get just pretty much anywhere. I messed that one up. I knew that would mess up because I would hit that. I'm so stupid. But you technically have the farthest dive, and in some cases the fastest dive speed, because you can actually let go at any point. Whereas Winston, you have to basically land somewhere, but it's pretty nice overall. I'm just missing everything today, man. Well, 200 ping, so not too bad. But yeah, there's those aspects. So Hammond actually has a very similar dive speed and a dive distance to Winston. Technically, I believe a farther dive distance. That is guaranteed. Dive speed, I'm not 100% sure. But so like Winston and Wrecking Ball are very similar in their dive distance. And let me go ahead and go into a custom game so I can just fly around there. No care kind of a thing. What are good maps? Let's do Kings Row. Let's mute myself in game 2. That would be nice. But yeah, so yeah, blame the ping. Hashtag blame the ping. Make it a thing. Make it so. Mute myself in game because that's not cool if I'm talking to nobody in game. It's like a useless thing to do. But technically, I think once people get down to it, because there's also that worry of Hammond is the hardest dive to actually run. And it's because you have to basically be Spider-Man, and you can't do that whole thing of just assume there's a helicopter keeping Spider-Man in the air. I usually hit that shot, actually. It's kind of disappointing. Wow. Ping's down, so I can't even use that as an excuse. I'm just bad today. But yeah, so dive distance, stuff like that. He does have some. It's the skill ceiling with his movement is pretty high, just because you don't have to be direct and you can change things around a lot more. It's a lot more tactile to move around. I believe that's the right word. I'm not an English major, so calm it down. But yeah, so with the different dive tanks, there's a lot of talk about a triple dive going on, and their triple tank dive, which is kind of interesting because it also begs the question of how do we do the triple tank dive with proper support. And off the top of my head, I know Lucio is pretty decent, just because he can pretty much dive with them. He does have a little issues vertically, but I believe the better Lucio you're playing, the better vertical. I'm just missing everything today. I'm just terrible. But so like the main ideas you want to take into account with diving as Hammond is, of course, the dive distance, stuff like that, and it's just gonna blame Dread and thank you. Oh my gosh, I'm opening this up and now everything's going to crap. Chat's going to crap. I'm going to crap. Ping's going to crap. It's all there. All there. But what you want to take into account is the dive distance, and that's where a lot of people had problems grasping with the Winston Divas, because the Diva moved a lot slower, so she ended up later, and if you timed it just wrong or anything like that, then the Diva would be too late into the fight. Winston already be there, and the Winston would just die because the Diva's not there in time. So it's just all kinds of issues, but mainly with a Hammond, you want to preset your dive. You can't just throw it at him of, hey, we're diving, and then he's like, oh crud, you're right there. Oh, okay, I have to follow you. Following does not happen with Hammond. Hammond has a different path, and that's going to be a lot of the things that teams are going to have issues with if they are used to just a Winston diving and a Diva following, is that you have to get your team to basically coordinate movement. Oh, I forgot about that Hammond change. The other Hammond change that I forgot to tell you about is his grapple hook's been increased, but again, it's not increased radially. It is increased vertically and horizontally. So it was 15, now it's 20, and that was also brought out the same time that they nerfed his overall speed. So remember that. That helps out. Chat is too rude. Thesis, you are the chat at the moment. Just because, like, the last 5 have been you. But it's okay. It's all good. But yeah, so making sure that you get that figured out, because a good Hammond can pretty much figure out how to get in any place. Like, let's say we're attacking here. So we're attacking, we go like, okay, we want to get on right high ground by tower. Then the Hammond player is going to go like, okay, boom, boom, dive. Knows exactly. On the other hand, if the Hammond doesn't know where you're going, and there's some teams that also have it set up where they just know. They just know what their team's going to run, and they know how they're going to attack pretty much every single time, so they barely have to talk. So, like, sometimes it's set up where the Hammond is going to... And I'm missing everything today. I'm just absolutely terrible. But yeah, so, like, following's not going to happen, but you could, like, pre-plan where you're going to land and stuff like that. And I think we have Garrett here, too. Pull Garrett in. What did Garrett say? Okay, yeah, you might just listen in. I'm going to unmute myself then. I'm unmuted myself so that you can listen in. Yeah, we have Garrett. We have Garrett on the line, but he has a dog barking near him, so he doesn't want to mess it up, which I thank him for that, because I know that a dog barking would just mind-numbingly bad. So yeah, like, tank combos, I would almost feel like a Hammond Diva would be pretty decent for people who are trying to warm up to the fact. A Hammond Winston is not too bad either, especially for teams trying to figure out dive overall, and they don't have to time everything just perfectly, and things just go a lot better. But yeah, so like you set that up and you're like, oh, we want to go to that far left. You're like, okay, and then you just boom, you set up there. But you just need, because every single time you're going, you need to grab a different spot. And I think as people get better overall, that might help out as well. Just making sure that, because you would be able to set that up. Wow, I'm just missing everything today. I have like 30 hours on Hammond already, and all of that's gone down the drain. That's pretty much what's gonna happen. Let me make sure chat's pulled up. Hammond and Doomfist, that is actually pretty good. Oh, and thanks, T. Hammond and Doomfist is actually another thing that people are talking about, just because it's a disruption style, and that I think is something that people who are thinking about Hammond are kind of forgetting. Is that, and there's kind of steps, and I followed this while learning how to play Hammond and just kind of like getting used to him. Is that stuff I needed to do like first or stuff like that? Just kind of like my list of things that I needed to prepare. Getting the movement down is probably number one. And then after you get the movement down, you want to get your impact on your grapple hook. So there's going to be a time where you're talking about, okay, I need to learn how to actually get to places with my grapple hook. But then you're going to start talking about, how do I actually have impact with my grapple hook? And that's where you start using it to knock people out, get into positions and stuff like that. So you're wanting to get damage out of your grapple hook as well. And that's a super high thing, is practicing that, and that's what I'm working on at the moment. I haven't been doing too bad on it, honestly, but just making sure that you're constantly getting damage through Wrecking Ball's grapple hook as well. So that takes into the idea of Hammond and Doomfist, where there's a couple of things as well. They do have a synergy issue, and this is just out of... I should have grabbed that. They have a synergy issue where if you pound down on the ground, they all go up into the air, and the Doomfist has problems punching people that way because his is vertical and he has to be on the same plane of existence. all that stuff. And I usually make that jump. I am just terrible. I'm going to keep doing it until I actually get it while I'm talking. There we go. I'll just say that I'll keep doing it until I get it, and I'll just get it. There we go. That's how it works. But yeah, getting in like the punches and stuff like that before people go into the air is a big deal. I know people have been trying a Genji with the Hammond, where the Hammond just goes ground pound, and then the Genji, boom, dashes through the air to hit the people that go up above. 150 burst damage, and you still don't kill anyone, and so people were like, nah, he's terrible. But it's really not the case. So yeah, just getting that stuff down. Triple. So like, I think the biggest problem with running a triple tank dive is figuring out the support level, honestly. Because you have like the high amount of healing that you need, but at the same time you kind of wonder if you need it. Like at the moment, solo support triple tank is a thing right now. And so you just kind of wonder, like, how do we compare to that? And basically, how that whole comp works is it's really based on not taking damage. So you just set up, you just make sure you don't take damage, and that's pretty much solo support comps in a nutshell. Is you don't want to take damage, but you also want to be able to sustain yourself a lot more. And so Roadhog usually heals himself, which is pretty nice. Hammond can do his like E ability, boom, all that stuff. Doesn't take a lot of damage, but the thing is that he still needs healing at the end of the day. And I've noticed myself that when healing is short, I'm spending a lot of time rushing to health packs, which actually isn't that big of a problem for Hammond, honestly. Is because you just kind of launch yourself into areas and you just grab health packs. I know a common thing that I just do on this map is that I just boom straight through, and then I roll down here, grab a health pack, cooldowns back, up 250 health, and then we just swing across. Yeah, pretty basic stuff. And so getting that down is also helpful. Just figuring out like support wise, I'm trying to think. I know Lucio's on my list because he's mobile and stuff like that. That's nice. Mercy's on my list because, fun fact, is that her Guardian Angel means that she can follow Hammond pretty much wherever. And so she's a good support to match Hammond because Hammond can just do stuff like this, and she can just, boom, follow in and just go with you. And so that's pretty nice because if Guardian Angels pretty much matches whoever she's following. I imagine with a little bit of the delay because you have to time everything just right, but not too bad. Lucio for movement, and then I'm stuck there at 3. I'm thinking Moira because you can throw in her healing orb, and that's helpful. Just being able to toss a healing orb and them to be able to fight around it. You'll be surprised how just like easy it is to dive a Moira healing orb. Once you get used to Hammond, but you have to get used to Hammond, so that's not an issue. That pretty much at all. So Moira's pretty decent. Brigitta's partial decent. But the problem is in the dive you want to run with mobile supports, and so that causes an issue as well. It's just making sure that you're running with mobile supports, and you're not always running with mobile supports. So what you would really want a Brigitte to do is just stay in the back and protect your supports, but they're all mobile on the front, so what are you going to do? May Hammond ult combo. Yeah, I'm okay with that. I'm actually pretty okay with that. I don't have a problem with that. Sounds pretty good. I think it's a thing that'll happen if you're ever running May, and I honestly think May's gonna get ran. If there's a triple tank dive, I think May's gonna get ran, and there's gonna be issues because like there was a group way back when triple tank, she wasn't around for triple tank. But when Dive first not first started to get big, because dive was pretty big way back when. But when dive came back after quad tank meta was in, so the tank meta, when dive came back in, people were saying that, hey, use Mei because she can't get dived. She just, boom, ice walls, goes into an ice block, and can freeze all the people. Well, she got a pretty big buff by being able to piercing freeze, which basically means she can freeze through people. And so I would think it would almost be a pretty decent like idea to run that, because then, especially with the fall off damage being removed from her, and now she's just able to do whatever she wants, that's really nice as well. And I think, yeah, ult combo would be pretty decent. I know that ult wise, Mei's ult's wider, but it can be used to just like hold people down in it. But there's a lot of things you can do to actually set up Hammond's ult yourself, which is pretty nice. Just because there's a combo. Let's see if we can do it. So you just go up, ult, pile drive, boom. Everyone comes to the center, boom, they die. Just because everything's timed just right. They land right as they start. Which is not too bad. Not too bad indeed. But yeah, so setting that up is pretty decent. Honestly, it's a good dive ult. If you just dive up, boom, ult, pounds, all that stuff. And you just obliterate enemies. I think Zen might... I think Zen would be pretty decent for Hammond, because Hammond's a very low maintenance tank, because he doesn't have a crit box while in ball form, and you'll get to finding out that you'll just spend a lot more time in the ball form and just doing stuff that way, but it's not too bad. Oh, and also, like, for a fun fact, you reload for about 3.5 seconds, maybe 3-4 seconds, I can't remember, after you get into the ball form. And so what that means is you can just like shoot, unload the clip. If you need to get out, boom, you don't need to reload. Don't worry about reloading that often unless you know you're gonna stay out of ball form, because now, hey, we're reloaded, how fun. There used to be a thing where if you pressed shift and your reload button at the same time, that it would reload it in 2 seconds, but it's just not the same, because they removed that. So yeah, it's about the same. Ult pound or pound ult. So it's actually better to ult and pound, and I'll show ya. Well, I'm gonna need to get my ult. But the reason is because if you just straight up pound on the ground, pile drive onto the ground like this, boom, and then you ult, what happens is they go up, you let it out, and then they come down, and they do have a split second to actually just get out. But if you ult down on the ground, boom, then pound, then what happens is while the mines are setting up, they're up in the air, which is pretty nice, because how it works is you drop the mines and the pile driver keeps you up in the air just slightly. You pretty much hit the ground at the same time the mines do, because you break physics and Hammond just hits the ground super fast, more than gravity, which is kind of funny overall, but you end up getting that extra little bit into it. So you pretty much hit the ground at the same time, but then the mines have time to set up, and that's where people are in the air, they're getting pulled towards it, and it's just much better overall. You'll find you'll actually just get kills just by using that, whereas a lot of people tend to walk away the other way. But yeah, what is the best way to farm ult charge? That's a good point. So the one thing that I notice a lot of people not doing is using pile drive off of cooldown. So just constantly make sure that you're using it. And a fun thing to make sure that you have it every single time you're in the air is use the time while you're grapple hooking as a way to actually scout out your enemies pretty much and figure out your best way to go, because then everything's just good. You can just constantly use it. You just basically wait for your cooldown to come back and go. And especially if you're spinning around here, and let's see if I can get this. So you can semi-control it. So yeah, you can control. Let's see if I can dip down. Yeah, there we go. So yeah, you want to get to working on controlling it. Yeah, so you just kind of let up a little bit. So how it works is you're going, and a lot of the times you're following with your camera using WASD to rotate. And you just kind of like rotate your keys, keep this constantly going. But occasionally you do where you go in the opposite direction, and that's where you start curving down. So a good way to, so as you can kind of see, we're like at an off kilter like setup. So let me see if I can. So I'll actually walk through the pattern. So you move pretty much like this. So you go down, touch the ground, come back up, in the air, come down, touch the ground. You can actually control that by controlling when you boost, because you can basically stop your momentum and then continue it. And how that helps is that wherever you're pointing also moves. It is a very difficult thing, and it comes down to learning how to grapple hook and actually get damage through the grapple hook, because a lot of people just tend to grab something central and just dance around it. But it's more about getting that damage consistent on them. And so if you actually just like hit, boom, 6 people, you've done 50 damage to 6 people. Whoa, you get a ton of volt charge to that. Pile drive. More people you hit, the more damage you do. And since it is all, for those who don't know, pile drive is set up at the moment where it does have fall off damage. Its max damage is 100 at the center, 30 at the edge. But if you hit multiple targets, it picks the highest damage that you'll deal to one of them and standardizes it across everyone. So let's say I'm just going to pile drive, and we'll just hypothetically say I land on one person, and then another person's at the edge of the pile drive area of effect. I did 100 damage to the person in the center, obviously. Now, theoretically, through fall-off damage, we would do 30 damage to the person at the edge. That's incorrect. We do 100 damage to the person at the edge because the highest damage we would do is on the person we directly landed on. But since, like, that guy over there was also hit during that, he takes the same damage as the highest damage that was taken. If I hit both of them, but off of the edge, so not in the center, doing the minimum amount of damage, then what would happen is they would all take the minimum amount of damage. So it's all based, everyone takes the same amount of damage in a pile driver, and it basically takes the highest damage that you will deal. And just standardizes across. If you guys don't understand what I'm saying, and I'm like being super confusing, I am sorry. I just suggest going into the practice range, pile driving the first 2 bots in the front, and just watch what happens. You'll see they both take the same damage, and they'll take the highest damage they'll possibly take based off of the fall off. So it does take into account fall off, but it only takes into account for the person you're going to deal the most damage to. It's stupid, I know. But yeah, so what that allows you to do is it allows you to hit a crowd of people. Boom. Hit one guy directly, everyone takes 100 damage. And you get a ton of ult charge based off of that. It's all nice. I'm talking in circles. It's kind of weird. Another thing to point out is you can start gaining ult charge immediately after you ult. You can see that, boom, we start getting ult charge immediately. So it doesn't last for the entire time. You press it, it goes out. It's off on its own. You can forget about it after then. Well, kind of, sort of. I do like I do like ulting, and then I tend to like to spin around as the wrecking ball, and then try to hit people in and out. It's pretty nice. I just knocked myself off. That's pretty nice. But yeah, being able to hit multiple people, so making sure you're grounded for a lot of the stuff, and then you have an arcing shot is pretty nice, so that you can hit more people. So like I tend to do this, and then I roll into it, and there's a certain distance where I can just roll and hit people, and just that whole disruption factor. And that's where some people are talking about Doomfist, because Doomfist has a lot of disrupting factor as well. I'm not 100% sure on it, I'll be honest, just because synergy-wise they don't do too well. They're very similar characters, but that's the issue, is they're very similar characters. So yeah, you could use it to... It's one of those where I don't think it's going to be that nice to deal with, but just having a burst damage comp, if you're doing a burst damage comp, I would use Doomfist. Because Doomfist is, I think, the epitome of burst damage dive. And that's where people kind of forget about Doomfist, is he's a dive hero with great burst damage. Let's go ahead and head back to spawn. And switch to Doomfist. I'm trying to remember what else. I need to remember to talk about how to run with him in a comp as well. But running him in a comp, what you're going to want to make sure to do is to sync up everyone diving at the same time. And that's a big thing. Is because everyone's so used to the regular dive, getting used to that is a lot better. So yeah, like Doomfist, boom, 250 damage, boom, 50 damage, boom, 50 damage. Pretty nice overall, honestly. So getting that burst damage down, I think... Let's do the math here. Oh yeah, Andre joined. Hey Andre, I'm doing Strat Chat.
Oh, sorry to interrupt.
Nah, don't worry about it. Just chilling out here talking about working with Hammond in a comp. And talking about triple tank dive and all that stuff. And then also talking about Doomfist in a dive as well. But yeah, let's see. Yeah, so that's 84 damage. If you did pile driver, you did 184. You still, because I'm thinking about like burst damage, a burst damage dive. So some people are talking about a CC dive with Doomfist, but I'm almost thinking of a burst damage dive where Doomfist rushes in and with his E basically does a decent amount of damage, especially if they're on the high ground. And if he does the uppercut combo, he pretty much does a decent amount of damage. Technically, does he have to land higher? Hold on. Well, that's weird. Oh, yeah, no, it's not that weird. You're technically going farther. So yeah, getting that burst damage of the 50 damage with Doomfist, and then the pile drive with Hammond, that's 100 damage. And then maybe the wrecking ball grapple hook hit would be pretty nice. I'm almost thinking like a burst comp. I almost like that idea of a triple tank burst dive. Because you land on them with Winston, you do 50 damage. And I would think in that case, to make sure that you're not diving on a team that's midair, you want Hammond to show up last.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because if Hammond gets there first, pile drives.
And then
boom.
Winston doesn't land on someone as
Yep,
well.
everyone goes in the air and Winston doesn't land on anyone. Yeah. And
the tricky thing about that is that Hammond's probably the more difficult of the tanks, of the dive tanks, to actually land on the target that you want.
Yeah, definitely.
Not by a lot, but it is less consistent.
I think on highest level, that's not going to be an issue, just because the people that are playing Hammond are going to be that just good to be able to do that. But overall, if you have the same skill set, it is harder to do Hammond. Just because...
How dodgeable is Hammond if you have, like, say, a speed boost going and you're a squishy?
Yeah. But yeah, just doing that that like dive burst, because like even if you have a Doomfist doing it, he loses all of his damage he would do with the E if he landed. And then his punch would have issues. Granted, he could hit someone as they're landing on the ground. That would be nice, because the time it takes for them to go up into the air and then him to punch them is pretty nice there. So I'm almost thinking instead of a triple tank dive, just run a burst comp dive. Where you just play Winston, Hammond, Doomfist, and you just land on them, deal a ton of damage. There's another thing that I've been noticing as well, is that people are talking about a triple tank dive, and then they're also not talking about what happens if you run against a triple tank dive, and this is where things get a little funky. Is because triple tank dive is going to basically rely on initial burst damage and then the cleanup, which isn't that bad when it comes to Hammond. People who are good at Hammond are going to be able to hit shots, because he's pretty much a mobile soldier, honestly. Just a little bit less damage. I think I like measured it, and it's the same as Bastion's scout mode, which honestly isn't bad at all.
I think his fall-off's worse than Bastion, especially now after the change, though. Pretty sure.
That was about the same. Oh, it just kicked me. Let's go back in. Yeah, I'm going to start it back up and invite Andre back in. Because overall, that would be rude. There we go. Sorry about that.
If you want to swap him to the other team, you can actually like try landing on me and stuff.
Yeah, sure. So let's swap the red team. There we go. How would a solo tank Hammond comp potentially look? I'm kind of wondering with Hammond overall, a solo tank comp with him. You would have to play it very, very not really self-sustaining, but you have to be very passive, because you couldn't have a Rhine shield to work with. Oh yeah, match chat. Actually, let's see, match chat. How would I do match chat? How would I set up match chat? How would I set it up? Do I have to go settings, lobby, match voice chat? There we go. Okay. Let's see if it works. Went to a different map too. Who knew? There we go. Are you in it? Are you in match chat? Yay! Okay. Took me a little bit to find it. I remembered it was a setting. But yeah, I think a solo tank Hammond comp. Because what's weird is with a Winston's not really used for a shield that much. It kind of is just to have, like, it's pretty much like an AoE defense matrix. So I'm kind of, sort of, on it. I think Hammond could replace, like, either tank. I don't think saying he's just in that off-tank slot, because you could run him with a diva. But I think, like...
Well, shield's more for stopping out with, like, the CCs and stuff that would come in from the other team.
Yeah.
Because one thing I have found is that while rolling, Hammond has really good survivability in a lot of ways, but when he's actually shooting, he just gets melted by anyone that can aim.
Yeah.
But since you're talking about playing him in a triple tank, then that can account for that. But that has to be the understanding that once again, another issue with leading with the Hammond on the dive.
Yeah, and I'm also thinking as well with a, trying to think like, because Winston has another thing as well where his gun literally shoots through a shield. That's very helpful. And very underrated. So I'm kind of thinking you would, in some cases, you would run him instead of D.Va, but I think you could justify to run him instead of Winston as well, depending on what you're running against. But I do personally like the idea of a Winston Hammond dive because they both have the same dive speed. So they both land at the same time, pretty much.
The D.Va traditionally lags and matrixes the Winston in.
Yeah, and you kind of have to time it just right. Basically, D.Va has to go in first almost. Because like the Winston jumps over her sometimes. And I do see times in which like a Winston dives in and the D.Va just can't reach that. It's just impossible for her, so she has issues. But it's not bad overall. But I don't think you'd want to run him solo tank competitively. I think in solo queue you can, but just basically have everyone run a very safe dive setup. So like maybe like a Tracer Sombra, so that they're self-sufficient. Basically run a very self-sufficient. And I do also notice that as Hammond, I'm doing a lot of tanking, like purposely. So I know like when a Mercy reses, I basically launch to her and then just stand in front of her as a ball and just tank the damage that comes her way. So like in some cases you can run him as like a shield tank, you just can't really shield tank a lot of CC. But another thing I did notice is if you are knocked asleep, you could still protect the Mercy. It's kind of funny. Something I've noticed is like if the Mercy's rezzing, you'll just basically land in front of her like this, and you're just kind of blocking, then they sleep dart you, and it's just like, boom, you're down. Oh, still blocking, you have to wake me up in order to do that. I'm not sure. I think sleep dart pulls him out of mech. Could you go on it real quick? I'll meet you at your spawn. So let's give this a shot. I want to see, cuz they've also changed how Andre, could you go Ana? Oh, let me see. Because on the PTR they had it set up that every single time he got stunned or whatever, he would basically just get out of mech. But now I believe the only stun that does get him out of mech is Sombra's hack. And I'm not sure if Sleep Dart does. I can't remember, honestly. Is he in match chat? Andre. Dude, where'd you go? Oh no. No. I think that's a no. But yeah, I know overall, like, because like sometimes if I know I'm gonna get stunned, I just boom ball form, and I stay in ball form, which is pretty nice. They can't hit you, which was the opposite on PTR, which is interesting. But I think the triple tank dive is gonna be interesting. Support wise, I'm still trying to figure out that third support slot. I don't want Brig because she's just immobile and you're wanting to run a mobile comp, I would say Zenyatta almost. I'd pretty much say that you would want Zenyatta. Just so that you could get that. Even though he's not mobile, you could just run a... You could run a Brig Zen Mercy. Kind of like regular. So you could pretty much run an 033 comp, which apparently is now called GOATS because Team GOATS basically did it, and now we have to now call it GOATS comp. Kind of sucks, but it's true. But yeah, you could run that with a Mercy, Zen, and Brig, and that kind of goes pretty well. Because the Brig can use her E, basically mass heal, and then also her passive helps out Hammond very well. I'm kind of okay with that, honestly. And then if you're running a Lucio, hey,
I feel like the main thing about at least for Goats comp is that the Moira in the center of it, and that's pretty, I think, pivotal to Goats comp typically.
Yeah.
But I could see how you could have a variation of it, still triple tank. But I think like Goats comp is probably going to be like the defining term for like a Moira triple tank rushdown.
Yeah. I'm just kind of wondering, like, if you played Zen Brig Mercy, very similar, but you made it more of a dive style. And you just basically, Brig would send her health pack to basically any one of the dive guys. Her passive would heal Hammond pretty decently. Because Hammond just doesn't take a lot of damage overall. And then, like, Zen can also do some healing. That wouldn't be too bad. I think, like, sustain overall would be a little south. But I don't think it'd be that bad, honestly. I think you'd have to be a little more passive. But, like, on the Moira, on the other hand, you can't dive with them. And that's the problem I'm having. You would have to throw the orb in.
Not without a Lucio, at least.
Yeah.
And then you still can't dive high ground.
Yeah, and there's no, like, vertical with Moira unless you do the bop into a rounded surface, pretty much. And you knock yourself in the air, but that's so situational.
But, I mean, at the end of the day, engagements, especially at the pro level, are, by their very nature, situational. Yeah. And I could see how, like, it would be a map-dependent thing, but there are some maps where you could maybe get away with using a Moira to dive onto a vertical surface just because of the fade jump.
You could
I'd be curious if there are any viable dives with that.
You could run Ana, because technically, Ana
the
does
Antonia
have
gets the value.
Yeah, and she has the
and then you have
long
range healing.
And
I mean, Ana and Winston is always strong.
Yeah, and a nano boosted Hammond's pretty decent. Because you basically, if you pile drive, you do 150 damage with a Ana nano boost. Especially with that buff they're giving her to give like 300
I think that's where
health.
it's going to be.
Yeah.
Where it's really going to come to its own. But personally, I still think most of the time, if you're going to nano a Hammond, your team comp also should probably already have a Winston, in which case that Winston probably should be your nano target. Except for the point where, like, you're going to be shooting at targets that can't move very well, and you're at, say, pro level, so your aim's really consistent. But most of the time, I think you're just going to get more value out of a nanoed Winston than a nanoed any other tank, besides arguably a Ryan swinging or a Blender Hog.
And I think as well, the reason why you would put it on a Hammond is so that you could stall, because Hammond is technically the best stall tank.
Oh my goodness, Hammond is so good at stall.
Without a doubt, because you can just constantly, like, do this, boom, stalling, boom, stalling. Oh, and by the way, I have 1,300 health. Winston ult, go suck it, kind of a thing. It's pretty much what just happens. I think Nano Boost wouldn't be too bad to deal with. And Lucio could run with a Hammond. The problem is that I think Hammond does have can get to places a lot faster, and I think you need a lot more hands-off support. So like a Brig health pack or an on fire. Because I've noticed a couple of times, like I had a game where a May spent the entire time trying to troll me because she was mad that she didn't get Hammond. And what's the funniest thing was that I pretty much never saw her. Because I was constantly up and moving and going back and forth and stuff like that. I would just occasionally see like a ice wall being thrown, generally in my direction, and I just basically walk away. And it's just kind of like, yeah, with a Hammond that moves just a ton, you're not gonna have a lot of time where you're standing next to a Lucio.
Right. The thing is, you wouldn't take the Lucio for the Hammond.
No.
You would take the Lucio for the rest of the team that the Hammond fits into.
Yeah, and I would
because
use it
when
as...
you're running him, you're running a very offensive, initiative-based engagement comp.
Yeah.
And Lucio's pretty much always good for that, or at least okay for that.
Yeah, and then the other thing that comes to mind is a lot of teams are basically running it where you want to engage into a fight without using your movement abilities, so that you can just get out whenever, instead of having like 6 seconds where you're stuck in the fight. And I've always just like wondered of like, why don't we just play Lucio and just speed boost you in, dive out, or dive in, speed boost out. And that's always been a thought in the back of my mind is using that. But I don't think Hammond's going to be playing a lot with people. I think he's going to engage at the same time.
Right.
But he's not
and that's
gonna
where he's more like a Doomfist or a Tracer.
Yeah.
Or even a Genji sometimes.
Yeah. And I was talking about of how
he's the Doomfist of tank.
Yeah. His dive's going to be a lot different than Winston. Because, like, let's say I'm here and I want to dive that high ground. As Winston, you just jump over there. Diva, she just jumps over there. Hammond, you have to get a little more, like, interesting. You have to kind of you have to step back, you have to grab the right target, and then swing to it. And that's how you do that. So you have to have a lot more, basically, foresight into the dive, which, honestly, is dive anymore. It's having foresight of where you're going. But it's not bad overall. Trying to think of what else. Ooh. Now I remember it. The last thing I was going to cover was when your team is playing Hammond. And basically how to deal with a Hammond on your team. And I think a lot of it is just letting the Hammond know where you're going to dive, especially like high competitive level. It's making sure where he's going to be needed. Because the Hammond's off doing his own thing, probably grabbing health packs, and diving in and stuff like that, grabbing targets and launching himself into situations. He's going to need that extra foresight to help out. And then I think as well, whenever like stalling a point and stuff, he needs just healing, because the healing you get on a Hammond is a lot better used than like Diva, because Diva has a giant crit box, whereas Hammond doesn't have that big of a hitbox, honestly. Head hitbox, but in ball form he has no head hitbox, so he can just stay there constantly. Oh, and PSA, Reaper's not a counter to Hammond. He is
not a counter.
Not
he just plays okay against them.
Yeah. If you're a bad Hammond, you're getting countered by Reaper. And the reason why is because you're spending too much time standing around a Reaper. Like, if you're here and a Reaper is up, you basically... Sorry, you came around the corner as I was pretending a Reaper would be there. Yeah,
just
like...
no bow.
A Reaper comes out, you're just, like, shooting him, and then you just, like, jump in, you boom, hit him a little bit, boom, dive there, shoot, and he's already freaked out and gone into Wraith form, and then you're out. You don't spend a lot of time, like, standing, like, gun dueling a Reaper. If you're doing that, you're doing it wrong. Because technically, Hammond has the longest range of a tank besides Orisa. And Orisa is being used to counter double sniper. Fun fact, Hammond's really good against double sniper. It is insane. Because there's like the whole butt jump as Winston so that you hide your hitbox.
Exactly.
I don't think you need to do that as Hammond. And then
plus an even shorter cooldown on the mobility.
Mm-hmm.
Plus more range.
Yep.
For less kite ability.
Yep. And then if you pile drive,
across the board.
They just go straight up in the air and you shoot them as on their way down. And basically the only way for the sniper like Widow to stop it is if she basically has like she freaks out when it happens and she basically grapple hooks away, but then you still have range to shoot them as they're flying away. It's not like Winston in which oh no, you're out of my range because you walked away. It's a literal like you can just keep shooting at them and they're dead. And yeah, it might not be the best damage in the world, but just hit your shots more, and burst damage as well is key. It's like if you notice it. See, I'm like controlling the burst damage, but if I'm doing this, boom, it just goes a lot wider and a lot more difficult. So I think like if you've played Soldier, then you'd be pretty good at Hammond. So I think overall like Andrew would be pretty good at Hammond, just because you play Soldier and you know that burst damage and stuff like that.
So far I like him a lot.
Yeah.
And I'm looking to pick him up as one of my tanks. I played mostly tanks these days.
Nice. Yeah, like you can see how much I've dedicated to him so far. Like, look, I got the Soul Dynasty skin. I really like it overall, but yeah. Supporting a Hammond, just making sure you're not chasing him down. I think the last thing you want to do is chase down a Hammond unless you're Mercy, because Mercy can Guardian Angel.
And even if you're Mercy, then that's a moment of vulnerability. Like if you following someone into a dive as Mercy can be questionable in any non-organized environment.
Yeah. Especially if you don't have Diva like Defense Matrixing you or anything like that.
Because when people are smart, then Mercy flies in, and people stop focusing the Hammond and they just land a flashbang on the Mercy, and it's enemy backline delivery service.
Pretty much. Yeah.
Which is why Anna's synergy with dive tanks is very interesting to me, because her ability to have a presence at a range, not just with her healing, but all of her utility. Even Sleep Dart, you can spam in places and get really good value a lot of the time. Yeah. Like, I mean, I'm assuming, do you see that Sleep Dart in the Spitfire Gladiators game?
No, I didn't.
On Li Jiang Tower. Just snuck right through and hit a Doomfist, and he napped on point for like the entire team fight.
Oh, gosh, yeah.
And then your anti-nade just with dive tanks is just ridiculous.
Mm-hmm. The only issue, and this is like the other side of it, is if the other team basically is defense matrixing or has a shield up, you're kind of not healing, which is the issue with her at the moment. It's just like shields and stuff like that cause problems, but like
if you take your fight really quickly, then that healing's less important than the anti-nade utility.
Yeah, and especially if you're running like triple tank dive against a triple tank dive, you just have a 600 hit point Winston shield. It's not that bad. You just shoot it down. Be a little more smarter with your Ana shots, but we'll see. We'll see how it goes. So yeah, I think I'll just open it up to questions on the live stream. If any of you have questions, go ahead. And also Garrett's on Discord. If he wants to unmute himself, he can. I don't care if there's a dog barking or if he's just good with chilling. It's up to him. But he's free to talk if he wants. Yeah, I have Garrett on Discord. Kind of funny. It's kind of like a weird triple conversation, except he's just out alone.
It's true. I'm just out of it.
Yeah. Do any of you have any thoughts?
I think one of the
Uh,
things that's
is,
going to be
uh,
interesting to
he's still on
see
PTR,
as
isn't
people
he?
develop Hammond play
Where's he at?
more is using his grapple less for the for getting high altitude on the engage and actually more integrated into a regular brawl and fighting, like to just be able to see a target and just say, okay, I'm just going to go swing and take it out.
Yeah.
Um,
I
to
think
use
one
that
of
as an actual boop.
yeah.
Like that's going to be some skill cap stuff that I'm interested to see where that goes.
Yeah, I've personally been working on, because first thing I wanted to do was I wanted to practice getting like his engages in, and like making sure that I'm doing everything right with the grapple hook and stuff, and practice that down. And then I wanted to work on actually getting value out of it. And so and I actually did talk about of when you're rotating around an object, you have like this saucer effect where you have a high point and then a low point, and you can control that by adjusting your momentum as you're actually flying. And so that's something I've been working on personally with myself to actually get down more towards. And you'll be surprised how fast your ult charges by doing that, just because you hit more people. And it's just like 50 damage every single time you rotate around, which is pretty nice. Garrett, you had something on PTR? Like, he's not on PTR,
Right.
he's live.
Okay, he is live. Okay.
Yeah. He went live Tuesday.
Makes more sense.
Yeah. I'm at like 300 ping, so I'm just like rolling around everywhere. But yeah, like some people so far have been talking about like a triple tank dive or or replacing him with Diva in a team comp, but
Just hate
basically
dive.
run by having a Doomfist. So technically, you switch out the Diva for a Doomfist and you run a CC comp, which technically I'm more talking about like a burst damage dive more than an actual CC comp. Because yeah, you can knock people around, disrupt them, but when everyone's mobile, it doesn't really do too much. Not really overall. Oh, other PSA. This is very important. If you are going to be playing competitive and you want to try out Sombra, don't. Just don't at all. Just stop it, because we don't like Sombra players who spend most of their time invisible because they don't want to actually be in a fight and just not exist for the entire match. So if you want to play her, learn how to play her, but make sure that you're not stealthed for that long, because it's just not fun. Yeah, you can tell I'm pretty salty about the new Sombra update. I just think it's just bad for solo queue overall, just because you're going to end up with a Sombra that just doesn't care. She'll just be like, oh yeah, I turn invisible, and we're like, you're not in the fight, and you don't exist during that time.
I mean, is it good for stalling the point?
No, you don't actually get any point stall, because they removed her ability to stall while invisible, and she can indefinitely be invisible, which pretty much means she can't shoot, she can't use abilities, and she can't stall. And whenever
so she's literally just not even there.
yeah, she does,
Which gives her great ability to set up engagements. Like
Uh-huh.
if you're looking to set up an engagement, then she can take all the time in the world and feed all that information to your team, call out dive targets.
Yeah.
Like
yeah, I think
crazy
like
utility
competitively,
there.
yeah, it's gonna
But
be great.
yeah,
Because
solo
she's going to be able to
queue-
call out stuff, but in solo queue, that's not going to happen. You're going to spend most of your time going, Sombra, where are you? She's going to be like, oh, I've been flanking around and I'm trying to, and it's like, no, just come on, play with us. Don't play to flank and kill that one person, because most of the time you're just going to disappear and then try it again, and it's just annoying. But yeah, that's just my vent. Know how to play Sombra before you play her, because it's just gonna be stupid, honestly. But yeah, closing thoughts with Hammond. For me personally, I think triple tank dive is gonna be interesting, because there's gonna be a lot less emphasis in the burst damage of one-shotting people that much, which is going to actually be interesting because there's that whole idea of, because I'm honestly wondering like if snipers are going to be a thing. Mainly just because snipers are used now because of their burst damage and they can one-shot basically squishies. But if you have a bunch of dive tanks that are super vertical, super mobile, and they can all harass the snipers, especially since Hammond has the farthest dive distance, because a big thing at the moment is that the dive tanks will try to create space for the snipers in the back to make it so that the dive can't dive the back line, which is kind of funny. That sounds a lot like the Two Lanterns comp philosophy, is make distance to do that. But they're using it with the dive tanks in the front. Hammond on the other side, and this also takes into account with the Two Lanterns comp, Hammond just jumps all over all of them, and it's just like, holy cow. You can jump through all of that and basically get into the back line without an issue. So that's also going to take into account something. I think snipers might have a problem. I think Widow personally might have a problem just because she's going to have a 10-second cooldown on her grapple hook come the next
Faced by a guy with a 4-second cooldown on his mobility.
So, yeah, well, Hanzo's been changed to a 5-second cooldown on his lunge. On PTR, if I remember right. But yeah, they're going to be changing mobility on snipers, so I'm not sure if we're going to have 2 snipers anymore. And because there's also the idea of if a dive is so aggressive that you can't keep distance to get proper stuff out of an actual sniper comp. Because sniper comps, yeah, you can get one-shots, but you have to have distance. And if the team is constantly closing that distance, then it's almost not worth running. And I see a lot more close quarters characters coming into play. Mobile close quarters characters. So it's going to be interesting to see. But yeah, I think that's going to be...
This is an interesting spot right here.
Yeah.
Up on this high ground, outside of line of sight, third-person peek, and then when the other team pushes in, you can potentially boot them straight into your team onto point and out of position. Yeah, how big is the hitbox on that? If I stay here.
Honestly, not too bad. Yeah. But you have to kind of control it. Yeah, so like right now I'm controlling to try to hit you.
Interesting.
Yeah, so I think that's going to be a big thing as well. Well, there's also the idea, and this was a thing that was brought up, was using Hammond to scout stuff. So you basically grapple up to something high, and then you get yourself closer so that the grapple cable actually shortens, and then it allows you to look over buildings and basically see the team coming in before they actually get in. So you can actually use it as scouting. Yay! It did that. Kicked us out. I'm just going to add Andre to the group. We can probably talk about this. And I'm just adding you to the group because I'm not going to rejoin a custom game because we're about done anyways. But yeah. So, thanks Andre for joining in last minute.
No problem.
Yeah. Thanks Garrett for joining in on the sign.
So. Oh yeah, I'm supporting.
Yeah. So
time to go watch some Overwatch finals.
Oh yeah, it's gonna be 5 o'clock Mountain Standard Time or 7 o'clock your time.
Minutes.
Yeah, 15 minutes. Probably a good time to stop, or else we're gonna lose a lot of viewers. Like I have any. Do I have any viewers whatsoever? Damn. Okay, never mind. I have 6 viewers. That's not as bad as I thought it was. People do like me. Yeah, so everyone, thank you for watching. If you're on Twitch, follow so you keep up. If you're on YouTube, subscribe that you can keep up there. I do different uploads on YouTube than I do on Twitch, and I do different live streams on Twitch that I don't do on YouTube. This is the only series that crosses over. And of course, if you want updates with all of it, I do have a Twitter account, which is basically just Dryden001, but instead of the E, it's a 3. So DRYD3N001. And if you didn't catch that right, it's going to be on YouTube. So just rewind it so that you can hear me stereo remixed, and it's going to be funny. But yeah, thanks for watching, everyone. Bye.